This film, Kinleith 80, was initiated by Gerd in 1980, and we're going to be talking about it, the three of us who made the film, after the screening, so I think we'll go straight into it.
The Prime Minister started it already, the Prime Minister with his statements last night, trying to still turn it into a political dispute, rather than face up to reality that he's got to settle the industrial dispute before that plant will open here in Kinleith.
For doing the restoration on this film. It was shot in 16mm back in the day and has never been digitised up to this time. And they came to the party and did a magnificent job. And Steve Russell is representing Ngā here today. Thanks very much, Steve. I also want to acknowledge A2 Union, who made a financial contribution towards the restoration, and representatives from A2 are here. Thanks, Tolly, and Yvette, thanks very much. I've got some questions here. Gerd.
This is how filmmakers work, we just interview ourselves.
What was your background as a filmmaker in 1980?
I came to New Zealand in 1977 with a friend of mine, in New Zealand, with whom I studied in Berlin at the film and television school. And he wanted to make a film about, Chris True, he wanted to make a film about the Maori, the situation about race relations in New Zealand.
Please talk into the mic, I can't hear the mic quite close.
Yeah, he wanted to make a film about race relations in New Zealand around that time. He'd been to Waitangi, I think, back in
That means putting the mic somewhere near your mouth.
Okay, thank you. Chris had been to Waitangi around, I think, 1975 and realized something was going on, what was better to become the Maori Renaissance. So I decided to come with him, and we made a film in 1977 called Waitangi, Story of a Treaty and Its Inheritors. It was pretty much foresight to do a film like that in 1977, about 2 years after the Land March film. And I stayed on in New Zealand. I sort of liked the place, I fell in love, and what you do when you're young. And had to make my final film for film school. And now I must say that the Berlin Film School at the time was a very political film school. You had to basically read Das Kapital, Karl Marx, first before they let you loose with the camera. And a lot of people were doing films about strikes and political upheavals in Germany at the time. Russell is actually right now writing a book about strike films, and we are looking at some of these old films. So I knew, and we had done one, a group of us had done a film about a little strike in Germany. And so I sort of continued that type of work when I came to New Zealand. And
you made The Hammer and the Anvil.
yeah, and The Hammer and the Anvil was sort of a handmade film about the history of the trade union movement. And in the context of that, I got to know Auckland Trades Council and Bill Anderson, Peter Purdy, a lot of other people like that. And these sort of films were designed to be educational films in the trade union context. So when the Kinleith dispute started, we knew we had to do something about it, but we also knew we had very little money. So initially, well, the first thing I did was I organized for Rod and Russell to help, because I had met these guys in between, and what we were doing in Auckland is what they were doing in Wellington, sort of recording big battles, the big battles in New Zealand at the time, whether they were land battles, Maori claims, or trade union battles or whatever. So Rod and Russell agreed to help, and we went to Kinleith once or twice early on, but we didn't have a lot of money. So we didn't really film much during the strike. Ultimately,
you got some sort of feed.
yeah, we got a bit of seed money from the Auckland Trades Council, so the very early stuff was paid by that. Once the strike was over, there was money left over in the strike fund, and we approached the FOL, and the FOL came to the party, and I think ultimately we got over a period of 1.5 years, something like $20,000 out of them, which was quite a bit of money at the time, but it enabled us to buy television footage. Have you seen there's a lot of archival footage in the film, we couldn't have done it without it, and do actually quite a proper job. So once the strike was over, Russell Lord and I went to Tupperware. We filmed the interviews with the people that you saw, particularly the women. The story became a great sort of a feature in the film. And ultimately, I think, when you start a film, you never know how it's going to pan out. But ultimately, it felt quite a nice little piece.
Was there any direction or guidance from the
No, I can't recall that. I think we really had, we were given a free hand to do what we like. And ultimately, it was, I didn't know enough about trade unionism in New Zealand, or not enough, or not as much as Rod, for example, Rod had done a film about the timber workers strike before. So he knew all those people in the area. He'd been to Kawerau, he'd been to Rotorua, he'd been to Tokoroa, he knew the people. So Rod, in a way, sort of conducted later on the interviews, so we got a bit of detail.
Tell us something about the people you contacted and talked about.
Well, for me it was quite, in a way, quite easy because we'd already made, Russell was one of the filmmakers of Wildcat as well, Gerd, mustn't forget. We made that collectively, and that film about the struggle of timber workers for control of their own union, remember? I don't know whether some of you would have seen this film called Wildcat, and it was a huge battle, a couple of thousand workers striking in order to get rid of a couple of corrupt officials. And so it involved all the sites in that area, in the timberlands area, including Tokoroa and Kinleith. So I already knew a lot of people, and so some of these people in the film and others, well, the timber workers not so much in the film, but they were my mates already anyway, And as to the question whether the union officials or official unions had any say over what we did, I, for one, wouldn't have taken any notice of them anyway, because at that time, they were a big problem to me. And my aim was to promote rank and file control of unions. So that was that was my big thing. So anyway, they were my contacts. But the site committee at Tokoroa was on the same page as me, obviously. So that was no problem.
In setting up the interviews, what were your ideas? Were you wanting to deal with working together, but you found that working collectively with a group of interviewees worked well, right?
Yeah, I suppose that was, naturally we think that way anyway, but when you get groups of people working collectively, they should be represented collectively on the picture, And we had a bit of experience in Wildcat already, and the best interviews were the ones that were in groups. So as much as possible, we wanted to put them in groups, and they were bouncing off each other, and it was lively. Sometimes the content of what they're saying is not incredibly important, but it's the subtext is, and just by having them in a group, it's amazing what you get out of them,
Yeah, one of the things I liked in watching the film again was the informality, particularly the discussion we had with the people in the welfare centre with the kids running around, the babies, and a bit of screaming off screen. It was unusual at that time. Documentary was fairly straight-laced, and I think we approached with the idea of being a bit looser and working very closely as part of the community. We wanted to feel a part of the community rather than outsiders coming in like a TV crew.
Well, how does something like that happen? I don't know, you just come there and, not not as just as an observer. I mean, people there got to know us. You know, we were on their side. We were political beings. We understood what their strike or you know, what their battle was all about. I mean, that's how we have done films from the beginning. And in a way, ever since, we have become we always became part of the dispute. I'd made a film about the Manor Bridge dispute around the same time, or a little bit before. And that was designed initially as a trade union education sort of a film, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And that strike went on over 2 years, and we went back, and in the end, I mean, and ultimately, I mean, we became part of this of strike action, and you know, discuss tactics and strategies. I mean, you become part of it. And in Kinleith, it happened relatively fast. People were open, so were we. That's how it goes, really. We are not television. We are part of. And the film was supposed to be part of the strike, or part of longer-lasting trade union battles. So the films we made were always designed to be part of the overall thing, not you know, removed items.
And it was never actually shown on television?
No, Kinleith was never shown, as far as I know. I mean, I left New Zealand in 1983 and didn't come back for about a decade. So, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, the film later went into the hands of the FBI or some years, and the FBI showed it around.
Rod, were there aspects of the struggle you would have liked to cover, which we weren't able to cover in the film?
Well, as just seen it, I mean, there's so many big themes in there, you know, and in such a crucial time in history. And, you know, the rank and file was going through, not just there, but all around the country. In Wellington, I was involved in it as well. I was a dusty at that time, collecting rubbish in Wellington. And we were going through tremendous battles, you know, to try and maintain our job, because Rogernomics was already hitting, even before Roger became a member of government. And they were the council was privatising services, and we were fighting against that. And so I've gone through a big battle. We were not only fighting the council, and we succeeded, we won the battle, but we were also fighting, again, union officials. And the union officials generally, I mean, there's brilliant ones too, I don't want to downplay any of these great battlers from the past that were great with us, but generally the official union movement wanted to, you know, just see us gone, because our wages and conditions, not the wages, but our conditions were a lot better. Our job and finish, for example, and all sorts of other things. We had control of our own disputes. We never had any official in on the negotiations, all these things, and the unions hated it. And so I was already in these big battles. So that was the sort of thing I would like to have been able to explain a bit more in the film. Everywhere I went in the country too, where there's battling going on at that time, we saw that Maori delegates were leading the workers on the rank and file level, you know, and it was very obvious. A group of workers and the Maori were leading them, you know, and it was very clear. Well, we don't depict that enough, you know, maybe more in Wildcat. And obviously the community involvement, that was another big thing. And I also learned that reinforced my attitude about that when I was in the Dusty dispute. We couldn't have won that without the community. And we did the same as they did in the Tokoroa. We had a couple of leafletings of all of Wellington. Everyone received leaflets in the mail, or on their bin, you know, in their letterbox or on their rubbish bin, explaining our disputes and so on. So it was only the community overwhelmingly supporting us, because they loved the Dusties, that we managed to stop the privatisation. So these things I would have, you know, all these sort of things would have loved to have gone on into a bit more, but not possible.
One thing that we didn't cover in the film was the rent baiting, and some of you might remember during the course of the struggle, Muldoon issued a list of 30-odd members of the Socialist Unity Party who were supposedly heavily involved in the unions and were manipulating this struggle. Going through the transcripts of our interviews, I found what Grumpy Wright had said about that. That word communism, that would probably have been one of the factors that Muldoon really went flat on, wasn't it? Because wherever we went, and at that time he was saying, oh, the SUP is doing this, and the SUP is doing that, and Bill Anderson this, and Bill Anderson that. And you know, it was never raised, was it? None of the meetings that I went to anyway did anybody ever speak about what about the SUP. It just went completely flat, which is interesting. I was mostly involved in editing the film, and one of the things I really was keen on was stressing the role that women were playing in the struggle, because we'd made two films, Wildcat and Century of Struggle. Wildcat about simple workers and Century of Struggle with the Seamen's Union, and there were no women in either of those unions. And so, women looking at our films, it's very male-dominated, so I wanted to do something about that. There was one little quote from Mary Flavel I found in the transcripts, which was probably just audio actually, and so that's why we didn't use it. But this is what she said after 8 weeks when Gerd first went down to film. I'll tell you what, if they go back to work now at the rate the government is offering, then come down here, you'll find all the divorces. There'll be stacks of them. Because I've talked to a hell of a lot of the women, and they're not going to let their husbands go back to work, not after this long period. There'll be a hell of a lot of divorces if they do. Too bad we couldn't use that.
I can't believe you would have left that out.
Yeah, sorry. In retrospect, I think we can all speak to this. This was a magnificent victory for the union movement, but we've got to realise the conditions which were favourable to the success of that strike. And one was the fact that Muldoon was in power and he was hated and brought in this remuneration act and had actually cut back on the driver's wage increase and said he was going to do it with anyone else who stepped out of line. So that meant whenever, at the point at which the government intervened and again cut back on the wage increase, the whole workforce of the whole country was on our side, on the side of the Tokoroa strikers. And another favourable thing was that there were, as the roadrunners went around the country, there were these concentrations of workers in big enterprises like the freezing works and the engineers of Air New Zealand, the drivers, paper workers and other mills, and so on. Much more of a manual labouring workforce concentrated in these large enterprises than there are these days. But, the composition of workforces changed quite a bit with technical developments. So that was another factor that made it possible to get that support. And I think, of course, the WFL coming in and saying, donate one hour's pay a week for this cause was a tremendous fillip towards the success of the strike. We could get the whole country in behind a particular group of workers was very important in their success. Nationwide solidarity. The other thing was, of course, the workers were concentrated in Tokoroa in a community, not separated out in suburbs or all over the place, so that a sense of community solidarity could be built. Do you have any other aspects about that?
Well, Rod, I think you can answer that better than
Yeah, it was, and so, they're talking about leafleting, being able to get all the information out.
I can't recall going down show the film. I mean, it would have been, you know, someone that the FOL would have sent along.
Yeah, around Wellington, I was involved in showing it around, but I don't remember wider afield from that. But the FOL had already a distribution plan, you know, and they were going to take it all around the country. Ollie's got something on that.
Yeah, I think it was a major film of its time. It was, and at the time I was on the president of the Tramways Union, and I remember it was circulated around. We, like a lot of jobs, raised money every week, and I think that it went into communities. It was shown. It was part of Tuya when I worked there as a trade in education, and we showed it around. And I think it was a very, very key one or film about the community involvement, how to prepare for a strike, how to basically raise money, provide food, run food banks. And we used it as the model when we had the big 3-week strike here on the buses, the involvement of the families, and I knew a lot of the people that were in that film and continued a connection with Kinleith right through with my union officials' work. I think one of the key things there is that for those people, it was the true expression of what happened. And I think he did a very, very accurate job on it. It's a journal of record, and I think it's been very influential in the union movement of taking it to that next generation. It was also the end, it was at the beginning of the new generation. As I said before, it came out of 51, and they were absolutely determined to make sure that they won that one, and they did. And I think it was a very important advance in trade union activity and trade union consciousness, and I think it's great to see it again. It brought back memories to me.
I just want to a little bit of history of the Pohlmann paper workers, because I was part of them at that time. We actually were on quite a high rate. I think the machine tender, which was the highest paid worker within our mill, was about $5,000 a year less than what the CEO was getting. But we did support timber workers. We did support people that were out there. We gave them choir. We put money in because we had our side funds, which we used to contribute every week. And yeah, I just wanted, you know, it wasn't that we were weak. It was that timber workers were on lower wages than what the pulp and paper workers were.
Well, we're probably it's probably time to have a cuppa.
Just one thing, I mean, the site was fully unionised because of compulsory union.
Oh, that's another problem, the workforce around the country was highly unionised because virtually compulsory union was in place. So that's the big difference with today.
Just actually one thing. When I came back to New Zealand after half a decade or almost whatever, Russell reminded me about the Kinleith strike. And he said, "Remember Kinleith when we did Kinleith?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Look, at the time there were 5,500 people working at Kinleith, at the type and paper mill. How many do you think now?" And I didn't know, and he said 700. And he said, "How many people do you think work for the Auckland Sky Casino?" And the number was something like 3,000. That's what has happened in that time. I mean, that's probably the next part of this symposium, but right.